Welcome to Grid Live Wrap Up. NASCAR, Homestead, Miami, last lap. Big move for the win. Tyler Reddick in the championship 4. Mexico City, Carlos Sainz got around Max Verstappen, took a dominant win. Plus, MotoGP, Supercar Series, Replica Supercar Series, and the Grid ranking all in today's shows. I'm Joe Santiago. With me, we got Kobe Lamas from the Podium Finish, and Matthew Bro is joining us. A lot of excitement on the air today because we have some great racing to discuss. A big thank you to our Patreon investors calling the show: Mark, Robin, David, and Matthew for investing in the Grid Network. You too can invest in the Grid Network each and every month. Help us stay on the air, help us pay the bills, and of course, we'll thank you on the air as we see it. And then, of course, if we don't see it right away, but we thank you on the air the next time we go on the air. And Matthew, let's talk about the NASCAR Cup Series, Homestead, Miami. This race, I have to say, has to be an instant classic. Tyler Reddick made a bold move entering turn 3 on the outside of Ryan Blaney, got around him, took the win. I did not see it coming. I think Ryan Blaney thought he was not going to do that because he had a little bit older tires compared to what Blaney had. Oh my goodness. He got around though on the outside. This really was just, I think, this icing on the top of everything, because we saw with 3 laps to go, he was in third. 2 laps to go, he got to second place, then one more position for the win. And this was all because Kyle Larson spun, bringing out that final caution. That really gave him that second chance, and he made the best of it. Tyler Reddick, did you see that move coming? And is this the best playoff move we've ever seen to advance to the next round?
Gotcha. And thank you guys for having me, Joe, Kobe, for on tonight. Usually I'm writing right now, but it was such an easy and exciting race to write about. I kind of got that all done quickly. So thank you again. But to answer your question, did I see the move coming? It depends, right? When you think last lap Homestead, Miami, there's 2 guys I think can make a move like that. One of them is Kyle Larson, but unfortunately he wasn't in the picture. The second guy, Tyler Reddick. I was just watching there, sitting on the couch with my mother with my laptop in hand, and just like we're talking like, is he going to do something? And just the full throttle, just move. It seemed effortless from Tyler Reddick in that 2311 Toyota. It was crazy. And so to answer your question, I did kind of see the move coming, but I didn't expect it to be that exciting as somebody like a race fan, right? That's what they're doing out there. They're entertaining us. And I think if you're a fan that you've never seen a NASCAR race, you got to see that. They got you. They got you in the loop. And now you're going to sit on your couch Sunday at 2 Eastern and watch the Martinsville race as well. And is this the best playoff move to advance to the next round? For a race win in recent memory, I believe so, yes. However, Ross Chastain's Hail Melon move at Martinsville to get himself into the championship 4 is definitely still the best move to advance in the playoffs. Probably one of the best NASCAR moves of all time, because, I mean, it got outlawed after that. So it's exciting for that team, 2311. They had a tough playoff run with Tyler Reddick. It seems like he had been inching by each round to get into this round and then to get into the championship. I mean, he was upside down last week, like Lee Diffie said. Now he's in victory lane. So regular season champion could actually fight for the championship. So that's about it about that one.
The Hail Melon move, I agree. I think that is very hard to beat, and especially we can't see such a move again. But the move that Tyler Reddick did, that got him in the championship round with a win. This is what they want to see in NASCAR in the playoffs, and this is the kind of moments I really love, just because we don't have somebody making a move such as pushing somebody out of the way. We know that's part of NASCAR, that's part of the sport, but like after what we saw with Austin Dillon and then the hot tempers, I don't like seeing a car getting wrecked just for the win. Make a move like this, sticking on the outside. This is the kind of stuff, even you're thinking of movies, Days of Thunder, Cole Trickle's winning move at Darlington on the outside of Darlington. On the outside of Ryan Blaney was Tyler Reddick's winning move. This is the kind of stuff you always think about, like, if I'm in this situation, go out there, get the win in the championship. What a moment. And all race long, Matthew, we saw plenty of great racing across the field, especially 8 laps ago. That final restart was just standing up, super exciting. You saw all the drivers that entered this race from the bottom four of the playoff standings going for moves, trying to get the lead in the win. I mean, from Denny Hamlin, Chase Elliott, Ryan Blaney, Tyler Reddick, all of them worked so hard. And at the end, Hamlin, he led with 2 laps to go. It looked like he was going to get it, but then Blaney got to him with 1 lap to go. And then, of course, as we mentioned, Reddick gets the win. And Homestead, Miami, we know this used to be the championship race. It's at Phoenix. Does this put pressure on NASCAR to move the season finale back to Homestead?
To be honest with you, I don't think this really does anything, unfortunately. Just the way business, like NASCAR's a business, obviously. So I guess the way it works, if you saw the attendance, I believe, from like certain perspectives, like a picture Seriously Fast Motorsports and Tom over there took showing the attendance at Homestead for like yesterday and today. It's a business to sell the tickets. And yes, I believe if Homestead was the championship race, which in my opinion, I agree with all you guys, I think it should be. I mean, this car is very beneficial with these intermediate tracks. And I think Homestead, dating back to, I believe, Kyle Busch's 2019 championship was the last time it was here. Then COVID, unfortunately, messed that up. And then it went to Phoenix, and that stayed in Phoenix. Just all depends on if they're going to sell tickets. And I know they do the business deals years in advance. So I guess, are we looking forward to, say, a 26 or 2027 Homestead championship? That would be absolutely wonderful, especially with this car. But out of the pressure on NASCAR, I don't know if it really does anything. But the excitement, I mean, I believe there was 33 lead changes in this race, which is a Homestead Miami Speedway record for the NASCAR Cup Series. That's what you want to see in the championship race. That's what you want to see. You don't want to see, I believe, the first time Toyota's actually not been relevant at Phoenix in a race since the next gen era. But they haven't, like, besides that, Toyota dominated this race or I guess it would be in March, April when it happened at Phoenix. So do you want to see that in your championship race, or do you want to see the regular season champion on the high line against the 2023 NASCAR Cup Series champion, with the guy in third being the best driver arguably to never win a championship, all racing to the line like that? That's what you want to see. And their job, it's entertainment. Do I think this pressures them? No. But I think they should change this to Homestead 2026, 2027, and for the rest of NASCAR's life to be the championship race? As a fan, yes. As a person who understands it, yes, they should do it. But, at the end of the day, they're going to do whatever's best financially for them. So I guess we'll see what happens. But I want to hear your input on this too, because I know we were talking backstage about it.
Yeah, I personally will love to see Homestead return back as the championship deciding round, just because, as you said, the competition we had, Phoenix cannot produce that. It's not because Phoenix is an inferior track. It's not a bad track. It's just a different style of racing with more focus on a particular groove. If that bottom groove at the north end of the track, where it used to be the old turn 1, turn 2 is good and hot, you're going to see everyone go there, maybe the upper groove. But then you got that weird dog leg that's now everyone's shortcutting. I mean, really, it just focuses on the restarts, picking up positions, pit stops. But here at Homestead, so many different options, so many different lines. I mean, we had no idea who was going to get the win when they restarted with 8 laps to go. You just knew there was a potential for the big crash that could have put a non-playoff driver in victory lane. We had 4 wide entering there. Any one of those 4 could have gotten the lead. Just in that momentum, keeping that line. It was just phenomenal stuff we were seeing. And just if we could have that for the last race of the year, I mean, that just shows that it's truly going to be the best driver that'll get the win. In the chat room, Ben, what's up, team? Good to see you, Ben. In his opinion, this beats the Hell Melon. All tires for the race win with the final turn, magical. Why did we move the finale again? That's a business edition NASCAR. Just one of those deals. And then Adam reminds me of Harry again when he drove in NASCAR, nickname High Groove Harry, Handsome Harry. This was just brought out the best in NASCAR. I think the Hail Melon brought up what the best in the playoffs and that pressure situation could do. This one is like, hey, this is the driver where where you're in the short track, working your way up, to have this kind of moment where you're down. You got to make this move work, and you did it. The car control on all the tracks, just phenomenal. I mean, I just really love this racetrack, Matthew. I think it should be a season-ending race. Hopefully, after the Phoenix deal expires, they'll bring it back here, and we'll see some phenomenal championship battles at this track. And the next track, Martinsville, the pressure is on. I mean, the pressure is going to be huge for the drivers in the playoffs that are not advanced in, because right now, Joey Logano, Kyle Reddick, they're in. They're probably going to have very quiet days. They could still just go out there and try to win and make life miserable for the others, but I think they're so focused on getting their car for Phoenix set up, you're going to see them rather be quiet. Christopher Bell, before you factor in stage points, 21st or better finishing spot, he's in, even when we get a new winner, because pretty much you got to be within the top 10 when you're looking at the others. You add in the stage points. If Christopher Bell scores 10 points, that just means he's more secure. As long as he doesn't have a bad race, Christopher Bell knows how to win and get in at Martinsville. I think he's going to be hard to beat. So really, you're looking at William Byron only 7 points above the cut line. He has not won since April this year. Longer winless streak than Max Verstappen. Denny Hamlin, same long winless streak as well since April. He is 18 below the cut line. Kyle Larson, the first driver below the cut line at 7 points, just mistake after mistake. Blaney, 38 points, and Elliott, 43 points. Those two easily in the must-win situation. I'll have to say, so will Hamlin. You can't rely on just pointing your way in. He was the driver that got eliminated from the Hail Melon. Is this the most stacked lineup of drivers battling in a must-win situation at Martinsville?
I mean, absolutely, right? Going into the round of 8, right? We had 7 of the top 8 in the points in the regular season. We're still fighting for the championship. Then obviously it would have been Alex Bowman, who was 8th in the points, so it would have been a clean sweep of the 8. Then Joey Logano, became even year Joey Logano, came from 15th. Kind of got a break there with the disqualification, then won his way into Vegas. But to answer your question about the stack lineup, yeah, I think absolutely. I mean, if you look at that lineup, it'd be my right, but right that way, right there. Logano's a champion, Reddick, future champion, even if it's not this year. Christopher Bell's been the best driver in the sport, in my opinion, in the last 10 weeks. William Byron was the best driver in the sport the first half of the season. Kyle Larson probably is the best driver in the sport. So Denny Hamlin, then going through that, right? Denny Hamlin's probably in a must-win. He's arguably the best driver to never win a championship. Ryan Blaney is last year's champion, and Chase Elliott is the 2020 champion. So heck yeah, right? About who is this the most stacked field? I really believe it is. And all of them were running. There's 1 through 7. I think I sent a message in our chat. The playoff drivers 1 through 7. Then Logano, who's just kind of chilling, was running 20th. It's going to be interesting too heading into Martinsville, right? Who's going to win? Because I think any of those drivers can win here. We've seen it before. When their backs against the wall, there's guys that perform, and it's definitely Ryan Blaney's one of those guys that when he needs to perform, he can perform. He did today too. I think he wasn't really on anyone's radar about finishing up there, but he had 48 points, I believe it was today. Very consistent day, but he still has a long way to go. So I think this is the most stacked field to race for the championship in a must-win too, obviously with Blaney, Elliott, and them. And then even Larson. I mean, Larson just it's either he's winning or sometimes he's wrecking. He spun today. I don't know if it was really his fault. The flat tire really wasn't his fault. It's just part of the game, right? So I don't know what's going to happen though, Joe. So it's going to be really interesting to see. As a fan of the sport, right? You don't know what's going to happen. I mean, there's a guy sitting there that's been in the sport forever that you think deserves a championship, that I think most of people watching NASCAR thinks deserve a championship, but they're 18 points to the goods, or 18 points to the line. So they got to figure that one out. So I guess we'll see.
It's going to be a wait and see at Martinsville. I just really, with Blaney, Elliott, it's almost either you just know you have to go out there, you have to get the win. If depending on the cautions and stage breaks, you just know, well, what will put us in the best situation to be in the position to win the race, you could sacrifice those stage points because at the end of the day, I mean, in Chase Elliott's case, he could win the 2 stages and he'll be still 23 below the cut line unless Byron and Bell have disastrous days. You can't really rely on those points. Denny Hamlin, I said on the pre-race show, I felt if he doesn't get a win at Homestead, Miami, he enters in the must-win situation. And if he doesn't win there, I just don't see him being at all a championship threat just because he just does not seem to have the momentum. This was a very good race from him. Chase Elliott, I got to say, very good race. Yesterday, I was saying how he only had his last top 10 finish at Homestead was 2020. He had a finish in the top 10 since then, but he broke that today. And Kyle Larson, and I don't know, Jackson. Excuse me, Matthew, because last Saturday, Isha and Jackson were talking about Kyle Larson. They were saying how Kyle Larson is always good, always a threat to win, has to be one of the favorites for the championship. But the question was around his lack of consistency, crashing in Atlanta, Kansas. Today, flat tire. He was luckily up near the wall, so he didn't spin out and hit the wall hard, or else he would have been out. And then racing really hard. I know Matthew White, he was on the USN radio broadcast on Joshua Birch Motorsports. He was saying he felt that was too aggressive. He didn't need to do that move. He could have positioned himself to be above the cut line at that stage. Lost all the positions, bad pit stop, fell back. How confident are you, Matthew, about Kyle Larson's chances of getting into the championship four? And if he does, being a serious contender for the championship?
Yeah, with a driver of Kyle Larson's caliber, right? Even if you aren't confident in him, you have to be, because like he's that one driver that even if he's running like today, flat tire, all of a sudden he's way back in the 30s. I had my fantasy team in a couple groups. I took Kyle Larson out because I'm like, oh, he's not gonna. Unfortunately, I'll save him, right? And then all of a sudden, I look at the TV. I'm like, he's in second. What? So he's just one of those drivers, and he's proven just like what Jackson was saying to Isha. Kyle Larson is very, very, very inconsistent, and I think that hurts him. But the issue is we overlook that because when he's not like wrecking or something happens like this, he's winning. So the sponsorship, it's great for Hendrick, HendrickCars.com. He's always winning, which is great. And he has the most wins this year. Even missing a race, I think he was like second. He was 1 point away from the regular season championship that he would have gotten if he at least was in the race at Charlotte during the Coke 600. So I'm confident in him getting in. And the reason why, too, if we look at the standing, William Byron has just been, I love that. As soon as I said that, I switched to it. I appreciate you guys. William Byron has been very just kind of, it was like, wow, William Byron 3 wins. And all of a sudden it's like, oh, William Byron, what's going on here? But he's still very consistent, obviously, in the NASCAR grid rating, too. He's up there in the top. So is Kyle Larson, Denny Hamlin, Reddick. It's funny, Logano's not. And then Christopher Bell. So if I'm a Kyle Larson fan, I would be confident in him making it in. And then if he does make it in, I'd be very confident in him winning the race. It's just, he's got to hope. It's sad. He's got to hope that Byron has a bad day. And I know Hendrick Motorsports, had a quite big possibility of getting all 4 cars in the round of 8, which they would have. And then obviously disqualification. They had one of the best runs since Stuart Haas back in like 2018. Could have probably had all cars in the championship 4. And then it's falling apart. I mean, that's what it is. It's just falling apart for them. So I think I'm confident in Larson to get it done heading into Martinsville. But when I think of Larson, I don't really know half Martinsville. She's strong everywhere, but looking down that grid, I think the guys behind him and even Byron in front of him are a lot stronger and have been a lot stronger there. So we'll see. What happens when you you doubt Kyle Larson? He'll be in victory lane, and at this time on Sunday, I'll be writing that story. So that's what's probably going to happen. I want to hear your take about it too, because obviously Larson is one of the best, not in NASCAR, but in the world when you think about it.
Easily, he is one of the best drivers in the world. I mean, when he's on it, he is hard to beat. We've seen those dominant performances where he just controls race. The Roval, Bristol, But it's days like today or that move towards the end, I don't know if he's just pushing it too hard or what, but I just feel that inconsistency makes me honestly less confident in his ability because as they enter Martinsville, Christopher Bell, unless he just goes out there and just does nothing on the track, if he has a solid day, collects 10 stage points, stage one, now he's 39 points above. He could really just then cruise to a top 10 finish and he knows he's in. He doesn't have to worry about it. Kyle Larson needs to go out there and beat William Byron. That is his teammate, equal equipment. I think Rick Hendrick's going to remind him, hey, don't wreck each other, but you're racing for a spot at the championship. Yeah, it's going to be something else for Kyle Larson to handle. Denny Hamlin, he's won at Martinsville. He knows how to get the job done. Ryan Blaney last year, Chase Elliott, two teammates. I mean, worst case scenario, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this as well, too. If Christopher Bell points his way into the championship floor, and if Denny Hamlin or Ryan Blaney gets a win, Hendrick is shut out of the championship floor. Kyle Larson, William Byron, Chase Elliott, that would just be a huge, I think, just drop in showing how Rick Hendrick gone from the beginning of the year where William Byron won the Daytona 500, got multiple wins. We all remember the last time in Martinsville, it was Rick Hendrick's, I believe, 40th year in the sports celebration. We kept seeing everything of the stories and Byron going out there. If none of them make it into the championship four, I just think that would just be a failure on Hendrick Motorsports' part. Do you think if none of those three drivers from Hendrick get in, 2024 would be a failure for that team?
Yes and no. I mean, yes, because they're arguably the best team in the sport. And yes, it'd be a failure because NASCAR's ratings, I truly believe, will dip a little bit with the championship race if you don't have a Kyle Larson, William Byron, or Chase Elliott fighting for the championship. Those are three of the most well, I don't know about William Byron. I think he gets a little disrespected in that. But Kyle Larson, Chase Elliott, two of the most popular drivers in the sport. But if, like, for certain NASCAR fans, if Logano, Reddick, Bell, and even Blaney, he was the past champion, I think that'll help. But Hamlin, too, that brings an excitement factor. But in terms of the entertainment value, I don't know if a race like this where Kyle Larson can still technically, if there was a regular season championship, Kyle Larson could still technically, or not regular season, full season, I'm sorry, have the most points scored throughout the year, but not make it to the championship four. That'd be tough for Hendrick. And they're one of, I think every team has an expectation. And you see the top tier teams, their expectation is to get at least one driver into the championship four. You've seen that with Penske now. You've seen that with 2311, their first ever berth in the championship four. And then Christopher Bell with Joe Gibbs Racing. They always expect one or two guys up there too. But for Hendrick Motorsports, if they fail to make the championship four, that is definitely a failure on their end. And it's not like it was really out of their control. It's just for 3 weeks, they just happened to have three different drivers from three different teams just really outperform him. And Christopher Bell, in my opinion, has been outperforming the entire field. Even if he isn't winning, he is finishing in the top 7, 9 of the last 10 races, which I thought was very interesting. So he's consistency wins championships. Kyle Larson has won one before, but he hasn't been consistent this year. I think if he gets into it, there's a chance Hendrick Motorsports, any one of those guys can win the championship. But if no Hendrick guys do, I think it's going to be Christopher Bell will probably be the favorite heading in there.
Christopher Bell has to be one of the favorites. Pre-race show I talked about, he's been running so good. He could have easily won Las Vegas. He was there towards the front, but just a little bit too far behind the top duel. But at 29 points, I feel pretty good about Bell getting in. But Hendrick Motorsports, they're going to have, it's not going to be exactly a fun day. Even if Kyle Larson, Byron gets a win, very likely Elliott and the other driver that did not get the win will be out of the championship picture. Some notable drivers not in the championship picture, but had pretty strong days. Alex Bowman, 7th. If he did not get that penalty, he's had some solid runs. I don't know how he would stack up in the points, but he could have easily been entering either above or below the cut line. On Martinsville, just unfortunate that penalty took him out. AJ Allmendinger, 8th place in this race. Carson Hocevar, ninth place, strong day. Ryan Preece, 10th place, and he leads the Stewart-Haas race in 10th, 11th, 12th place finish with Barry and Chase Briscoe. Noah Gragson back in, I believe, 19th position. Any final thoughts on the race at Homestead? Because this was one of the best races, probably the best of the year.
Yeah, it's exciting. This next gen car really shows how great it does on intermediate tracks. I know obviously a lot of us don't think it does as well on every other style of track, but intermediates is must see television, and it has been. The closest finishes this year have come not only on super speedways, but as well on intermediate, obviously at Kansas. But final thoughts about the race. I mean, yes, for Bowman, it's tough because he would have been a sleeper threat for this championship. Allmendinger, it's really crazy how quietly great he is at Homestead. Well, even though he's not leading any laps, I think he was fifth, third, or fourth, third, fifth, and third the previous two races this year. Then he's eighth. He has tied for the lowest average finish at Homestead in the last, I guess, 2-3 races. I think he has a 5.55 average finish, which obviously wasn't full time, so kind of less of a sample size. But Carson Hocevar got a lot of Lee Diffie attention, I believe it was today, which was pretty awesome for the Aspire Motorsports team. He's been quietly doing well. I believe he'll win Rookie of the Year, if I'm not mistaken, unless somebody pulls one out of nowhere like Harrison Burton did at Daytona. And then Ryan Preece, it's very sad for Stewart-Haas Racing. Obviously, it's the end of an era for them. One championship here and there, but for them, you see the reactions on like social media when they post their graphics of qualifying or the race results, and they've been very bad lately, except for Briscoe's win a few months ago. It's just been very disappointing for them. But to see them have a 10th, 11th, and 12th in their third to last ever race as Stewart-Haas Racing, that's exciting for them. And then the race, though, exciting. 33 lead changes, most ever at Homestead, Miami. Seeing all those playoff drivers fight. Must-see television for the intermediates. I'm just worried now. Expectations are high heading into Martinsville. I don't know what's going to happen. I know we've seen the product at Martinsville besides the Hail Melon, right? So I don't know what's going to happen. I'm worried. But how about yourself, Joe? What are your final thoughts? You said this might have been the best race of the season, so I want to hear what else you got.
Yeah, I feel this was probably one of the best races of the season. I mean, the intermediate tracks this year, Kansas, phenomenal racing. I mean, what I think made this race stand out a little bit more is the fact that it is a playoff race. The stakes are higher. I do get you do sometimes miss out on some of the good storylines, but like you said, Carson Hocevar got a shout out from Lee Diffie. Stewart-Haas Racing, that would have been a great story. They were able to interview those three drivers, considering the circumstances that team is closing up in 2 more races. The racing today, this is what I really like about NASCAR in general, is when you have a track where you have multiple grooves, multiple lines, you could race side by side. You could take the lead one lap, lose the lead the next lap, build up another run. You're not so dependent on some of even the 1.5 ovals where you have to sort of build up that momentum here. You could build the momentum just by taking that high line, exiting the corner, and just get in a run. Because that's what Tyler Reddick did. He exited turn 2, slid up in front of Hamlin. Hamlin had to run. He didn't push him, but just I think maybe that little bit of that air effect getting compressed between the two cars. And then he just went for that last move. That's what good racing is about. The drivers can tailor it to what's best for their car. It's not just everyone flat out. It's not everyone in the same line, same groove, and you're dealing with dirty air. This is just great racing product overall. Very excited, and unfortunately, Martinsville with this car is a little bit of a challenge, but I just always feel like at least this race, the second to last race, something spectacular. Whether it's Christopher Bell in a must-win, getting a win, the Hail Melon, the beating, the banging. I think we're going to see it's still going to be a pretty good race. It won't be, I think, the same as the prior generation just because of the current generation struggles. But overall, I'm excited about Martinsville, the battle for the last spot. Because I'm pretty sure unless Bell crashes on lap 1, he's in. Everybody else trying to get in that final spot is going to be the big story in Martinsville. Of course, we'll preview Martinsville Saturday on Grid Live pre-race. Also, next Saturday, we'll preview Formula One. We'll bring Kobe in. Kobe from Grid Tonight. He will be here to talk Formula One because they were in Mexico City.
Yeah, that's right, Joe. Great day of racing on this beautiful Sunday. And so starting off with Mexico City now, when Carlos Sainz took the lead from Max Verstappen, almost looked like Verstappen didn't even see it coming or expect it. After that move, Sainz had no challenge the rest away from teammate Charles Leclerc, who lost second place in the latter half of the race when he had to save his car from crashing into the wall. That was quite a save by Leclerc there. Almost looked like he was, in a sprint car there trying to save that thing. And that save from Leclerc allowed Lando Norris to take second as Leclerc ended up finishing third, last spot on the podium. McLaren now leads Ferrari in the constructors by 29 points as Red Bull fades down the stretch. Starting with you, Matthew, can Ferrari close in on McLaren and take the constructors? This is something that's come as a complete surprise this late in the season. We kept saying that McLaren could potentially take the fight to Red Bull, and they did, and now Ferrari's just come in the mix like almost out of nowhere.
Yeah, I think they most definitely can take the fight just because, Ferrari, we always would joke, like, obviously the biggest meme out there is about Ferrari's strategy. And it went from, wow, Max Verstappen and Red Bull, they're going to win every single race this year. Then it turned into, wow, McLaren has a lot of speed. And then all of a sudden, what happened to Checo Perez? Now McLaren's in the constructors. And that's like, wow, here comes Ferrari. And so it's this Formula One season went from the lowest expectations I think fans have had for it to, wow, this is actually really exciting. And I think Ferrari can definitely do it. I initially said a few weeks back in our chat that Leclerc could probably be a threat to Lando Norris. I don't know if that will happen, but I think Ferrari is 100% a threat to McLaren. And it's crazy that Red Bull, Max Verstappen's probably still going to win the championship, but Ferrari might take the constructors from McLaren. I think that's the must-see battle from here on out is McLaren versus Ferrari, because you have drivers who I think they've all won twice this year. At least with Lando, Oscar, I don't know if he has one or two wins. I think he does. And then Carlos Sainz and then Charles Leclerc. So it's exciting. And I think there's 4 races left, I believe, looking at the schedule. So anything can happen in these 4. And then I think there's like 2 sprint races, right? I'm not a big Formula, I'm not as informed about this, so I apologize. But it's going to be real exciting. I'd love to hear from anyone in the chat room as well, what their thoughts are about this. And then obviously you two as well. What we expect to see, right, is Red Bull's faded and McLaren's starting to fade a little bit, but here comes Ferrari.
It looks like here comes Ferrari, especially the last 2 race weekends. I think Brazil might be the big test for Ferrari and to see where they stand, because right now, these 2 tracks I feel have really favored the Ferrari engine unit. Mexico City, especially that thinner air. When you look at Brazil, that track with the high-speed corner seat you have in that front straightaway, the long backstretch, that technical section, I think this might be something where McLaren's going to say, we need to rebound. It's just sort of surprised me that I feel the last 2 race weekends seems the Ferrari strategy group has been one step higher than McLaren right now. Oscar Piastri, qualifying has been a little bit of a weakness lately, especially in Mexico City. 15th place, he had to work his way towards the front. If he had qualified in the top 10, make it to Q3, easily could have been a better points day for McLaren. He needs to step that up, because at the end of the day, if Ferrari has a good, strong weekend, another double podium or another win and their driver 4th place, McLaren needs then at least one driver on the podium, one in the top 10 to try to keep that buffer. Because at the end of the day, as you said, Matthew, you got 2 sprint races, you got the 4 Grand Prix races. This is far from over, and it's just still shocking that Red Bull is now 3rd in the constructors, and I think it's safe to say Red Bull will not overcome Ferrari this year.
Yeah, totally agree with you there, Joe. I think the Constructors' Championship is basically going to be over for Red Bull, but at least they were very strong at the start of the season. I think that's going to be Max Verstappen saving grace in his Drivers' Championship. If the Red Bull car, didn't fall off, when it did, if the Red Bull car had fallen off a lot sooner than it did, then I have a feeling Max Verstappen's driver championship hopes would be in trouble. But yeah, Matthew, like you were saying, I totally agree that Max Verstappen probably still going to win the drivers championship, but Red Bull constructor hopes don't really see that happen now. It's a 2-horse race between the prancing horses at Ferrari and McLaren. I think it's going to be really fun down the stretch to see which team is going to end up taking this constructors championship. Definitely going to be a lot of fun to follow. But if you're someone like a Lewis Hamilton who's coming in next year, you have to be very excited to see where this Ferrari is, and maybe he can get back to his winning ways on a more consistent basis in 2025. But for now, we're focused on closing out this 2024 season and really excited to see how this goes. And moving on, Max Verstappen in the Drivers' Championship, he's leading Lando Norris by 47 points. Verstappen and Norris also had more controversy today on the track between themselves with track limits in turns 4 and 8. Verstappen pushed Norris wide both times, and he got 2 10-second time penalties for both incidents. But we saw Sergio Perez push Liam Lawson off. Lawson pushed Perez, and Perez ended up pushing Lance Stroll. So a lot of pushing going on track. Julian Palmer said the mentality of racing to the apex changed last weekend at COTA with all the craziness there, with Lando Norris getting a penalty, for being pushed wide by Max Verstappen. So I guess you can say it definitely changed the equation there. Starting to you this time, Joe. Has the FIA created a mess at COTA and set a new president? Do you think they did a good job of cleaning that up today, or did they just end up making it more messy?
I feel it just made it a little bit more messy. Because from what we've seen, at least with the Max Verstappen case, it's pretty clear he pushed Lando Norris wide off the track. Lando Norris gave up the spot, because then there was a question of, well, if he didn't give up the spot, could he face that penalty like he did at Circus of America? Well, Max Verstappen got that penalty, so in theory, he didn't have to. You didn't have the second incident where clearly this is, I think, just Max I just think for not thinking at the moment, goes in there, he was no way going to make that move work, gets around Lando Norris off track, push them both wide. That was just not smart. I think that one is not the concern for me, at least when it comes to the FIA officiate. I think everyone could agree that second incident was blatantly a clear penalty. But it's that first incident, because now we're essentially reversing the course of what happened in Circus of America. We're saying that, okay, you push somebody wide, you're getting penalty. Well, then what happened in Circus of America? Is that negated? If Lando Norris felt confident that he was pushed wide, decides not to give up the position, does Max still get that penalty, or did they say no? I think this is just becoming a big confusing mess, to be honest. And especially we have the upcoming track in Brazil. There are some runoffs here and there. There are corners where you could push your opponent wide. The end that backstretch, we've seen that become an issue, especially when it's Max Verstappen versus Lewis Hamilton. I think this is just gonna keep going, because throughout the day, I feel like everyone was just trying to push, not give the room like they used to. And the FIA, I don't know if they can during the season, because we're so close to the end, say, okay, this is how we're going to monitor it now. But for the next season, I think they have to, because it's almost becoming too predictable now. Someone's going to make a pass if the driver gives them the room, if the space. But if it's not the case, they're just going to end up getting essentially held up, and then maybe a penalty, but we don't know. That's messy. I don't like that.
Yeah, I think they're kind of in a tough spot here. And I think it's good that drivers are being penalized, but now it is kind of creating a mess where there's not as many clean overtakes as there usually are. It's kind of like, for example, Max Verstappen these past couple weeks has just been, I don't know if he's playing mental games with like Lando, but he is racing like you race normally. Oh, there goes Carlos, there goes Charles, and then all of a sudden Lando's up here, and it's just like this different mentality from Max Verstappen to get into Lando Norris's head. And when it comes to everything, obviously he's pushed him off the track, I believe 2 races in a row. And I think for Max, it's tough for him, because not including sprint races, it's been like 10 since Spain, I believe, 10 races since Max Verstappen's been on top of the podium, which is completely unheard of for him. So I think he's being a little overly aggressive, because if he's not going to win on the track, I think he's going to win the mental game against guys like Lando Norris, in terms of somebody who got their first career win and now is all of a sudden fighting for a championship in the same 20 races that have happened. So I think the FIA kind of, I agree with you, Joe, it's a little bit of a mess, but I think with all the penalties we have seen, it's definitely, they're showing that you guys just can't do this, because we're going to throw penalties at you, and it hurts. It hurts a lot for some of these guys. I mean, there's a lot of points up for grabs these last, now it would be 3-4 races, including sprints, that you need to be on top of your game. But if all of a sudden you throw like a Max Verstappen 20 seconds worth of time penalties, I mean, he ended up finishing 6th, but he could have easily, without those penalties or driving people off the track, podium, and that would have almost not clinched him the championship, but he definitely would have, his odds would have been a lot higher. So I guess we're just going to have to wait and see what happens these next couple races. I think Charles Leclerc is probably the happiest of everyone watching these two go, like Max and Lando, go head to head. And if, like, for some reason at Brazil, say these two take each other out like they did, I don't know what track it was a Spa, they took each other out of the race George Russell won. Correct me if I'm wrong if that wasn't Spa. But if Charles Leclerc is sitting in a position like that, all of a sudden that championship lead gets cut again. And then if that happens, say one more time, it's cut again, and it's going to be a 3-way battle. But that's more fantasy than anything. But we'll see what happens. That's how I feel.
Well, Matthew, I wouldn't necessarily say it's fantasy. I mean, the driver's title is still not over yet. We could see something like that happen in this final few handful of races, but I agree it would probably be in the category of unlikely at this point. But never say never, because the motorsports world always surprises us. We've been surprised multiple times this season. In Formula One, we thought Max Verstappen would have had this drivers' championship locked up, many races ago. But here we are, coming down the stretch, and he still hasn't clinched the drivers' championship yet. So it would not surprise me if we see yet another surprise thrown our way. But getting back to the question itself, yeah, I agree with both of you. I think it does get kind of messy, but after the penalties that we thought were kind of ridiculous last week at Coda, it was nice to see them actually make some good calls today. But it just goes back to the inconsistency that we're seeing with the Formula One race stewards. And I hope they try to continue to get better and make the right calls. I was pleased with the calls that they made today for the most part. Definitely better than what we saw 1 week ago. And I believe I have a question from Adam in the chat room. It says, who would have thought Max Verstappen having a 20-second time penalty? Well, after everything you saw last week, I thought it was a deserved penalty for Max Verstappen. Also goes to the notion, like I was saying privately among our group chat for Grid Network, Joe Matthew, I think that this is a Max Verstappen, when are you going to learn how to race others type of challenge, because it seems like when he's, out front, had the best car, he's almost unstoppable when he has the best car and does a really good job. But when he gets back in the pack and has to race others, his racecraft is, kind of messy at times. Like he's not always making the clean passes, pushing other wide, and it just seems extremely aggressive. And I'm sure that's very frustrating to all the drivers around him.
Yeah, I was just going to say, it has been frustrating just seeing all this, and the penalty. Well, I was thinking, it's like, okay, on the surface sounds harsh, 20 seconds. With his car, though, he got up to 6th place. I just felt like, is it really that harsh of a penalty compared to if they had some sort of rule or something where it was like, you have to serve it in the next 2 laps in other source? I was just like, it was something, but I don't think it makes a picture that clear that you can't do this.
Yeah, and for Max, I agree with you there. I think he's gotten to kind of what we saw from Sir Lewis Hamilton back. You're competing for wins every single race weekend, and all of a sudden you aren't. And I think for a mentality aspect for the driver, it's not like you're not used to it, but if you get in a rhythm where you're always not around anyone, like Max Verstappen has been for the past 3 years, winning, and all of a sudden now you're fighting with drivers, I think your mentality does change a little bit. And we saw, I believe, with Lewis for the past 2 years, after when Max started competing, obviously in 2021 and won the championship. But yeah, to answer Adam's question, it doesn't surprise me because of the way Max has been driving. but it didn't really have an effect on Max Verstappen as it would have on probably the other 19 drivers in the field. So I guess we're going to see if we see another Max Verstappen penalty, because I think now it's him playing the mental game. Personally, I think he's such a great driver to where now he might take that 5-second penalty, he might take that 10-second penalty, because even though it's just time for him, it might have a way more of an impact on another driver racing. Like, wow, I can't not gulp, like for lack of a better term, ooh, like, oh, I'm coming up on Max Verstappen now. It's like, how's he going to race me? And then now you're getting in the driver's head. So that's how I feel. Am I accurate? I don't even know. But I guess we'll see for the next couple weeks what happens.
I was thinking that after the two incidents, it seemed like Lando Norris was a bit hesitant to get around Max Verstappen and was thinking, I'll wait for the penalties, but that causes him to race just waiting forever to get Max into the pit road. So I do think there's a little bit about that mind game aspect.
Yeah, I think Max Verstappen isn't afraid to poke the bear at all. Like, as you say that, since like considering where he is in the championship right now, like you guys were saying, probably can afford to take a few risks like that. But that is an interesting aspect, about the mental aspect of this and playing mind games with other drivers. And honestly, if that was the case with Lando Norris, you can't much blame him, right? Because of how aggressively Max Verstappen races and defends him and shoves him off track and all of that. If I was any other driver trying to come up and pass Max Verstappen, I'll be honest, I would be a little nervous to pass him as well. Like, is he gonna push me off track or is he gonna put me in the barriers? Because these days you don't really know. And also wanted to add on with another point just saw from Jennifer from the Associated Press. She posted a photo of Christian Horner meeting with the media, and he was strongly in disagreement with the penalties, saying, you can see a picture of him, and he's like showing he actually brought out points of data, trying to prove that, say, this is why Max should not receive a penalty, but I don't, really think that's going to mean anything in the grand scheme of things, because Formula One's going to be moving on to Brazil next time out, and we're going to leave Mexico City behind. But before we leave Mexico City behind in our segment, we want to talk about the driver who always comes here, has high expectations of doing well, and it's his home race, and what I believe could probably be his final time racing here at home. Sergio Perez's home Grand Prix in Mexico City got off to a rocky start due to a jump start after pulling it ahead too far from his starting grid spot. The car had no pace all day and finished, disappointing 15th out of the points, his worst finish when running at the end of the Mexico City Grand Prix. And last year, also disappointing for Checo. He had a DNF from this race, lap 1, and this year, just plain out struggling again. And Jenna Fryer from the Associated Press also asked Kristen Horner a question after the race. She said, is Sergio Perez going to finish out the season? And Kristen Horner told her, look, it's a performance-based business. There comes a point in time that difficult decisions have to be made. And after reading that comment, I think we could have potentially seen Sergio Perez run his final race at Red Bull, because those comments from Kristen Horner kind of telling in a way. Matthew, do you think after a disappointing Mexico City Grand Prix, does Red Bull need to drop Sergio Perez? And if they drop him, do you think he'll probably just finish out the year at Visa Cash App RB?
It's tough. The fall off of Checo should be studied, because it's just, he went from, wow, he's going to have a great year, and obviously he single-handedly helped Max Verstappen win that championship a few years ago too against Lewis Hamilton. But Red Bull, something must be going on or something over there, because it's going to be a tough decision to make. And I think, personally, out of respect to Checo, you've gotten this far with him. He's done a lot for your team. I'd say leave him in, but I don't think Checo should. I think this should be his final stand in Formula One, kind of like Daniel Ricciardo was almost pushed out. I think this is time for Checo to hang it up. I mean, he's done great. He's had a great career, very respectable career. But for somebody who hasn't finished in the top 5 since Miami in a Red Bull car, no other Red Bull driver has ever been treated like this, to where they can continue racing in this top team. Like Pierre Gasly, if he was finishing 5th or 6th, they were like shaming him. Same with Alex Albon, these guys. So Checo's something. I don't know what's going on over Red Bull. I think now that they've lost, they're not going to win the Constructors' Championship. I don't know if you should put, say, Liam Lawson in the other seat and give him the chance. I don't know. They're in a very tough pickle over there in their Red Bull development program because I don't think Yuki Tsunoda's ever going to get that seat. I think he should probably move on because I think he's stuck right there in the 1 or 2 seat for Visa, Cash App, Red Bull, that whole team. I don't think they need to drop him, but I think they got to stop not playing with it, but I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what they're doing at Red Bull for Checo to still be in this seat when guys like Liam Lawson was battling him for the last point stop, or last point place. I'm sorry, earlier in the race when Liam flipped him off or whatever. Checo said he's an idiot. Liam said he's an idiot. I think the fall off needs to be studied for Checo. I don't know what happened there. I don't think he should be demoted, though. I think it's either you demote him or not demote him. You either finish out the rest of the year with him and say goodbye. I know he's already signed the contract, or you let him go now. You either let him go like right now or let him finish out the season. You don't demote him, though. So it's very disappointing for him in arguably his final race at this track. And it was terrible. I mean, he was not in contention for even a millisecond of this race. So that's how I personally feel about it. I don't know if you guys will agree or not, but
yeah, I would agree with you in that sense. I would be shocked if Sergio Perez comes back to Mexico next year and he's with Red Bull. I just do not get the move because, like you said, he has gone from helping Max Verstappen get his first championship, being beloved, and improving second place in the drivers' championship to now, because of his lack of performance, Red Bull's slipping away from that constructor championship. And we're not just talking, oh, this is just a small setback and they're going to come back. No, with the penalties Red Bull has gotten over the budget cap stuff, it's starting to get to them. Third place in the constructors now, behind Ferrari, behind McLaren. This is not the direction to go, and I get it. Sergio Perez brings a lot of sponsorship money with him, more so than Yuki Tsunoda. He has the ability to go out there and get the win. He was at one point king of the streets. He's had a good long career, but it's coming down to the end. I just do not see how you could keep him around any longer because at the end of the day, when are we going to see the Sergio Perez that was up towards the front in a backmarker car like Force India Racing Point, where he got that surprise win? I don't think we're going to see it. He's getting older. I know I talked about it yesterday. You look at the drivers from Mexico in the top 3 series, IndyCar, F1, NASCAR. Sergio Perez, I think, has the most bleak outlook because at the end of the day, where's he going to go if Red Bull decides you're done? V-Carb? That team's not exactly winning caliber. Yes, they got to 2 wins. Pierre Gasly, Sebastian Vettel, his first win, but I just don't see that again happening. Maybe he could get his confidence up because then there's less pressure and could run strong like a Pierre Gasly, but does Sergio Perez really want to be with that team? I think the answer is no. Does Red Bull want to can Perez during the season? I think not. I think they're just going to try to finish it off, but because at the end of the day, you are in that jam, like you said. You put in Lawson, you put in Yuki Tsunoda, just so that way Honda will be happy that he drove a Red Bull and say, well, we tried it. Then next year, whoever you put in there, I just don't get what Red Bull's going to do in this mess.
To add a quick point to that, I truly believe Red Bull is worried because they don't believe there's a better driver than Checo to be in that car. I think they missed out completely to bring Carlos Sainz back to the team. I mean, you have one of the best free agents out there with Carlos Sainz. Is now he's going to Williams. Obviously, he just won today. I think they missed the complete, whether money, Red Bull's got a lot of money. Carlos Sainz, maybe not, he doesn't bring as much sponsorship, but they completely missed that out. And I think that's why it's kind of biting them right now when it comes to that. So I wanted to add that point about that. I don't think Red Bull's confident enough in Liam Lawson. I really don't think they're confident in Yuki Tsunoda, or else he would have already been in that seat. And I think the Daniel Ricciardo experiment, bringing him back, I don't think it worked for them either. And now they're kind of in a pickle where they just have to stick it out and take the money lost by finishing third in the constructors.
Yeah, Matthew, I think that's an excellent point. I really do feel like Red Bull is stuck right now, and there's no real good plan B of what they can do right now. I think just the way things are right now. Although I do believe that this could potentially be Sergio Perez's final race with Red Bull alongside Max Verstappen. If it was me making the decision, I'd say, you know what, this season hasn't been what we expected from the constructor side of things. Yes, Checo's let us down, but we just have a few more races to go. Let's just finish out the year. Yeah, let's just keep him in the car the rest of the year, and then we'll figure out the rest. With the legal situation, trying to get out his contract next year. And as I said before, I would be very shocked if Sergio Perez is on the grid at the start of the 2025 season in a Red Bull Formula One car. I think the chances of seeing that happen, although he does have a contract for next year, I think the chances of that are extremely unlikely. Yeah, it just hasn't been going well. And yeah, Matthew, I also agree with your point that it needs to be studied. Like, how on earth has Sergio Perez fallen off a cliff right now? It's just unbelievable to see how this driver has just continued to struggle, and things don't seem to be getting better at all. Real unfortunate situation for him. Yeah, but after this, I'm not really sure where Sergio Perez go. I know it would be really hard for him, for these final few races if he has to drive around in a V car to close out the year. And Liam Lawson, young driver, still getting up to speed in Formula One. I don't know if it would be the best situation right now to put him in that Red Bull car, because if you do that, you can destroy a young driver's confidence, and then once you've lost your confidence, then it's basically game over from there. Especially given the high pressure environment that is Formula One, and the pressure to perform, it's always enormous, but more so here at the pinnacle of motorsport. And if Red Bull were to make a driver change this late in the season, I'm not really sure what they do. Put Lawson in that second RB, then who are you gonna replace Lawson at V car? Knowing Red Bull, they might ask Daniel Ricciardo to come back, after dropping him, and that would be the most Red Bull thing I could possibly see happening. Yeah, I think that's actually something that could happen. Believe it or not, I don't know if they want to take Isaac Hadjar out of the title fight there, or maybe they make Honda happy by giving a Yuma Iwaza, a few races in the V car as well, who's currently doing a solid job for Red Bull over in the Super Formula Series in Japan. But yeah, we'll just have to wait and see how this goes. And also, before we move on to the grid ranking, I want to bring up a point about Liam Lawson, guys. This is the second straight week in a row that he's drew a lot of ire from veterans of the sport. Last week it was Fernando Alonso, showing his displeasure to Liam Lawson with the way that he acted on the racetrack. And today it was actually Sergio Perez who was very frustrated with the Liam Lawson. And according to John Noble from Autosport.com, Sergio Perez says, he thinks the way that Liam Lawson has come to Formula One, he don't think he has the right attitude to be a Formula One driver. He said he believes that Liam Lawson needs to be a bit more humble. And then Alonso, last week as well, echoing what Perez was saying, they believe that Liam, needs to have more respect, and also understanding the fact that he is a rookie and all of that. And starting with you, Joe, and you, Matthew, like, we know Liam Lawson, has a lot of potential in Formula One. A lot of people think he can do really good things and stick around in this sport, for quite a handful of years as one of the young prospects at Red Bull. Do you think it's, not a good thing for his, very early on in his Formula One career to be angering Formula One veterans like Fernando Alonso and Sergio Perez?
Well, if we remember, Max Verstappen, when he was young, angered some drivers as well too with his overaggression. I think the big thing with Verstappen, though, people saw him as a generational talent, as a megastar. Liam Lawson, I don't feel could say that same kind of attitude where people are saying he is that generational talent, that superstar. I do think he needs to be a bit more on the, run your own race. You got to be competitive, yes. You got to be aggressive, yes. Especially in this mess of F1, FIA. Oh, push a driver wide, but you don't get a penalty most of the time. I just think this is maybe a little bit more on the FIA part for not making it clear where for Lawson to come in and then race how he raced these veterans. Very different from what Fernando Alonso, who this was his 400 start, 400 races ago in 2001. Much different era of driving in F1. Sergio Perez, been around since 2011. Much different rookie year. Now you got to go in there. You got to be aggressive because of what we see with drivers like Max Verstappen, even Lewis Hamilton, how he'll push drivers wide. The starts are something else. I think this is just combination, I don't fully put it on Liam Lawson.
Yeah, for me, you took the words out of my mouth when it came to. There was a Red Bull development driver, who came in and really, yes, peed off some drivers, but he was a generational talent. That was Max Verstappen. I think Liam Lawson's great. I think he deserves the seat here. I think besides Yuki's start to the season, Liam Lawson has been the best driver in a Visa Cash App car. But should he be more humble? Probably. It's not really great when you have two veterans of the sport that are mad at you. But he's racing to earn a spot. He's like, you guys finally gave my chance. I'm going to outperform this car every week. And I believe he has done that. Now, if this was Kimi Antonelli, we probably wouldn't even be having this conversation because Kimi, I think, has been viewed similar to Max Verstappen. But Liam kind of got the short end of the stick. He was a development driver. He got a chance. I think he got a few chances last year too. But he's probably, for his best interest, he probably should take a step back. But he's got to do what he's got to do to earn that seat. He's seeing what's happening with Checo. He's seeing what's happening with Yuki and the unluckiness they've both had. He's like, if anyone's going to get that seat, I don't want them to go from a different team. I don't want them to, I guess, not outsource, but, like pick a different driver for another team to come over. He's like, I want to earn that chance. And I think he's trying. I think he's really doing it. Like, if they're going to replace Checo with anyone at Red Bull, you would have to think now that all the free agents are off the table, unless Valtteri Bottas gives them the lottery, to get in that seat. Besides, with free agents, you think it'd be Liam Lawson in that car. So, yes, we're going to see what happens. But I guess for his best interest in his youth, he should probably take a step back and not get these veterans mad at him. But if he wants to try to be like Max Verstappen, I think he might be trying a little too hard with the aggression he has.
Yeah, a lot of these young drivers, not just in Formula One, but all across motorsports, it seems like as they get younger and younger, it gets more aggressive. Like you say, Joe, times has changed. When Fernando Alonso was a rookie way back when, 400 Grand Prix starts, quite a milestone. And earlier this week, I saw a graphic showing that some of these drivers weren't even born when Fernando Alonso made his Formula One debut. That just shows you how ancient Fernando Alonso is, in racing age here. And a lot of these drivers, just some of them were teenagers, some of them were like in elementary school. So he's definitely been there, done that, seen it all. But in Liam Lawson regard, probably don't want to be anchoring, a lot of the veterans on the grid who have been here so many races. But at the end of the day, Liam Lawson's racing for himself. And yes, it may, impact how drivers are going to race you in the future. If you make them mad, they may not give you more room. It might be like Max Verstappen. They might just push you off the track, and be like, heck with you. But Liam, he's waited for this opportunity for the longest time. He's finally a Formula One driver, and he needs to show what he's made out of. And if you don't show it, you get kicked to the curb, just like Daniel Ricciardo did from this program. And I believe we'll leave it there with Formula One, and we'll move on to the grid ranking, starting with MotoGP. We started the week with 9 left in the grid ranking World Championship, and now it's down to 6 as we hit week 30. Pecco Bagnaia and Jorge Martin finished 1-2 in Thailand. They put the grid ranking out of reach for drivers like Alex Palou, Chaz Monster, and Brock Feeney. Bagnaia and Martin are known for winning or crashing. The stats show why those two are on top. Bagnaia has won 9 of the 18 MotoGP races, finished on the podium 14 times, and second in the MotoGP points. Martin leads the MotoGP standing. He has 3 wins, 14 podiums, and 6 sprint race wins. He also has a 17-point lead in the championship with 2 race weekends left. One of these 2 riders will be the MotoGP world champion. Joe, who do you like entering the last 2 race weekends?
That is a hard question. I feel Jorge Martin has the advantage. He is riding smarter. He just has to be within a position of Pecco Bagnaia. At the same time, Pecco Bagnaia, if he gets win after win, it's going to make it really hard for Martin. So Martin has to get a win here or there. But I feel Martin has a better shot than Pecco Bagnaia at the moment.
For me, I honestly have no idea, because I think one fascinating thing that motorsports fans don't give credit to MotoGP is that there's always a battle. And there's always, I think it's the one sport. I mean, when we were looking at the grid ranking just now, there's not a lot of drivers that are so, like, the MotoGP has 5 drivers that are always winning, always up front. I know Formula One kind of has, but this year they've had 7 winners. But MotoGP, they have obviously Martin and Bagnaia. I don't know, because I feel like Martin, when it comes to the Sunday, is more likely to win. But when it comes to, or other way around, Bagnaia has won, 9 of the 18 races. That's absolutely insane. But I feel like sometimes a little bit of Larson-esque. Like if he's not winning, sometimes something just happens to him, whether it's on the last lap, whether it's early in the race. So I couldn't tell you who is going to win this. I don't know if it's going to be a collapse like it was, I feel, last year. So I guess we're going to see. This has got to be the most exciting, like for motorsports fans, besides the idea of NASCAR in the winner take all format. The MotoGP is going to be must see TV, and it comes to that, because even if these two wreck each other out, I know Marquez is really far back, but it's like even if he wins, it'll make it look a lot closer. So we'll see. I want to hear. I think Kobe has some great input on this. I know we were talking backstage.
Yeah, this MotoGP World Championship has been really crazy this year. And as we said on previous shows, it seems like it's a championship that nobody wants to win, because one week you'll see Pecco rise, Martin fall, and the next week you'll see Martin rise and Pecco will fall. It's just been going back and forth, back and forth. I think it's going to come down to the season finale. I believe it's in Valencia, correct, Joe? That's that's the season finale in just a few weeks' time. And I think it's going to come down to that race. It's going to come down to the sprint race and then the very last lap of this MotoGP season. Been really exciting to see these two riders go back and forth. Two really interesting storylines. Pecco Bagnaia, trying to run it back and get another championship, and then you have Jorge Martin, going to be leaving Ducati at the end of the year, going to Aprilia. That would be a really great story, to go out as a world champion in MotoGP with your current bike manufacturer while you're going to be moving on to the next, because we've seen time and time again when you're like in the lame duck phase of the relationship between a driver / rider and their team, it's usually not going well. You're not usually in the hunt for a championship, because you usually get cut off from certain meetings and certain data. But it seems like Ducati is, they've done right by Jorge Martin. They're all in on winning this championship, and going out the right way. And it really seems like, that they could be destined to do that. So really looking forward to seeing how this MotoGP World Championship shapes up down the stretch. And now moving on to the Repco Supercars Championship, 180 points separate Will Brown and Brock Feeney, the two AAA Red Bull Ampol Racing drivers. And those are the two drivers who are eligible for the championship moving into the the 2 different races that we have on the streets of Adelaide. So Red Bull Ampol Racing can celebrate, because one of their drivers will be the champion, since all the others were eliminated after the Gold Coast. And we'll get to your question in a moment, Adam, because that's basically what we're going to be talking about in just a few seconds. Brock Feeney, he needs to go out and win race 1 at Adelaide to keep his title hopes alive, and 150 points for each race win on the streets of Adelaide. There were 2 races on the Gold Coast, and 300 points were on the line, but we saw Will Brown turn a bad start to the weekend into 7th and 2nd place finishes in each race, with Cam Waters and Brody Kostecki winning each race on the Gold Coast 500 weekend. Matthew, do you think Will Brown has one hand on the championship in Adelaide?
I believe so, yes. I think it's kind of comparable to Max Verstappen, right? Will Brown had a great start to the year, like absolutely. Him and Kostecki were winning like everything. But Will Brown, I believe, only has like 1 win in the last since race 8 of the season. And I think it was just a few weeks ago, or probably knowing supercars, probably a few months ago, of the way their schedule so spread out. But yeah, it feels like Will Brown's kind of, it's that meme, right? Like the reaching, like he's so close, and then Kostecki's like right there to take it. So it's going to be exciting. Obviously, Triple Eight Red Bull, or that team out that way. I think obviously they're going to win the championship. I think Will Brown's probably the favorite to do it, obviously with the points lead. But these last couple race weekends, it's even though they're up in the podium, they haven't been winning, which seems like unlikely with them, especially throughout like the SVG years. So, are they going to – I don't know. I think Will Brown's probably going to get it, right? He holds that lead. I feel bad for guys like Chaz Muster. He's just so far back, but he's had a quietly wonderful year. Then Cam Waters, obviously, great weekend for him too. But Will Brown, Brock Feeney, I hope to see one of them in NASCAR again or someday. I know Brock Feeney started over in the States over here, but to answer your question, though, in a very long circle, my apologies, I think he does have one hand on the championship, but it wouldn't shock me knowing this sport, something could go wrong in qualifying, and all of a sudden he's starting way back, and Kostecki could be starting up front. So we'll see what happens.
I have to agree. Will Brown has one hand on this championship. I mean, last place is going to give you 30 points. Winning the race will be 150. If he was to finish last and, you know, Brock Feeney was to get the race win at race one in Adelaide, he's still going to enter the second race with an advantage. Much smaller advantage than he would want, but really, even after this race weekend at the Gold Coast where we saw Will Brown have that crash, I wasn't sure if he was going to make the start of the race because we've seen that in the past where several years ago, Scott McLaughlin had a huge crash, did not make the start of the race, lost the points. I think it's going to be something where for Will Brown, after that race weekend where he said, hey, I came back, got seventh place, came back a second place. Even if you have a disastrous start at Adelaide, he knows that team could rally. He could claim the championship. He gets a top 10 finish or just at all finish ahead of Brock Feeney. He has it. I think it's one hand on the championship. And honestly, if I was Supercars, depending on how that last lap starts, he could start engraving his name on the trophy, depending on how it starts.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to clarify, I apologize. I made a mistake when I said Brock Feeney. I was talking about Brody Kostecki, who started his career in the States. Sometimes these drivers, I mean, they dominate, like Kostecki's dominant year last year. It's just, I get them a little mixed up. So that's on me. I apologize, guys. So,
Yeah, all good there. But yeah, Brody Kostecki had a great weekend on the Gold Coast. It seems like after he made his shocker return earlier in the season, after we had a few races under our belts, Brody he didn't look like Brody at all. He was just struggling. Basically not even running anywhere in contention at all. It seemed like he was just far off. I didn't even seem a little disinterested in driving the race car. But these last couple of race weekends, it's been remarkable. He looked like the Brody Kostecki who won the championship last year. So I think we can definitely say that Brody Kostecki is officially back. And we'll have to see him take that mentality to Dick Johnson Racing in 2025. Things seem to be all peachy at Erebus right now. And it's really crazy that Brody's even moving on because it makes you wonder, Erebus and Brody have found their groove again. So like, why are you breaking the band up? I even think the team principal, Barry Ryan, even said that after Brody won race 2 on the Gold Coast. You're like, Brody, why are you leaving? Because things are going so well right now. And then things on the other side for Dick Johnson Racing this season, not really going so well. So I guess it might be an uphill battle for Brody next year, but winning the Bathurst 1000 and then coming on and winning on the streets of Surfer Paradise on the Gold Coast doesn't get better than that in Supercars land. And as mentioned before, 6 remain in the Grid Ranking World Championship. Bagnaia and Martin control their destiny by racing each other for wins. Will Brown must win both races at Adelaide to have a chance, and both MotoGP riders have poor races. Max Verstappen can do it if he wins the remaining races, and MotoGP riders end up having bad luck. Marquez and Nea Bastianini need to win the remaining races, and the top 2 have bad luck. Next weekend, NASCAR ends the round of 8 at Martinsville, and Formula One is heading to Brazil for the Sao Paulo Grand Prix. And now I'm going to turn it over to you, Joe, for a great one and shining moment.
Yep, coming down to the end of the show. So this is where we share our shining moment from the race weekend. Encourage everyone watching, comment in the chat room. What was your favorite moment, your one shining moment of the weekend? Kobe, let's start with you. What is your shining moment from this weekend?
I actually have a few shining moments. My first shining moment, obviously, the end into the Cup Series race at Homestead. That was just spectacular and stuff like that. That's exactly why I got into racing. And in the first place, I just thought it was a truly great race all around at Homestead Miami Speedway, and to see the end and Tyler Reddick being the Homestead high rider that he is, making that move last lap, final turn for the win. That was just spectacular stuff, and that's the type of stuff that people love to see in racing. Just thought that it was just a really, really good race. Definitely an instant classic, a race that we'll be talking about for many years to come. We definitely had quite a few bangers this year in the NASCAR Cup Series. And second shining moment, I already talked a lot about him. Brody Kostecki, I think it's really good to see him coming on the form towards the end of the year, and he has a lot of confidence, looking like the Brody of old, and going into 2025, that'll serve him well as he moves on to a new race team. And my third shining moment from this race weekend, not even someone who competed in a race, but a driver who ran in FP1 in Mexico City, Pato Award. He was very close to Oscar Piastri in time and looked really good. And And if you saw the scenes on social media, like the fans went absolutely incredible for Pato O'Ward. This may be a hot take or anything, but I believe they were more happy to see Pato O'Ward than they were Sergio Perez. Like, it was just so amazing to see, the fanfare that Pato O'Ward brought with him. And also it shows IndyCar, that they need to get to moving when it comes to getting a race to Mexico City, because if you have a superstar like Pato O'Ward who can draw a crowd, where the line is wrapped around a building to see Pato O'Ward, that is just massive. And you don't really see that anywhere else. So, yeah, and I also saw some people it was actually Zach Brown, I believe, like wearing a Pato Who hat. So I think if IndyCar is able to get to Mexico, that would be spectacular. And then they need to do it as soon as they possibly can. Thought Pato executed this weekend perfectly. Did exactly what the McLaren Formula One team wanted him to do in the FP1 section. But more importantly, he did what he was supposed to do off the track, and promote the sport of auto racing.
And yeah, I mean, it's funny, I think I share the same. The first two, absolutely, but I want to touch. I agree, the marketing and Pato O'Ward for what he brings to the sport of IndyCar. If he didn't have it, if he wasn't in IndyCar and the way it's been going, I would worry a lot about IndyCar. That's how much of an influence he has with the Pato Who and his performance in FP1 and Mexico City. So that great. I have two shining moments for real though. Same thing as you, Kobe. I'm just going to talk a little bit differently about him. Unfortunately, I can't think of anything else. But Brody Kosecki being back is pretty exciting for Supercars fan. For the way he started, obviously missing the start of the year, obviously everything going on with the sponsorships and stuff. Coming back, winning one of the biggest races of the season, and coming out winning again it would technically be today, right? In our time. And then for Tyler Reddick in 2311 is probably my one shining moment. Tyler Reddick specifically, I don't know if it's the first time, I guess he swept the weekend, right? He first in practice, first in qualifying, being on pole. He wins. He's the first pole sitter to win in 53 races, according to Trey Ryan, who wonderful guy. Use his stats in my stories if you read gridnetworktv.com. So Tyler Reddick and then Michael Jordan being a co-owner. They're suing NASCAR, and now they got a car in the championship and have a big chance with Hamlin to be up there too. So that's my shining moment, that move by Tyler Reddick, and overall his just performance to back against the wall, got it done. So those are my two. I hope Joe had a different one than us, Kobe. I know we were thinking alike.
Yeah, my shining moment, Carlos Sainz, that Ferrari drive. Considering he's on his way out, some people thought, oh, he's not going to be a contender for a win. He's not going to do much. He's still displaying how smart of a racer he is. Being on the radio saying, hey, we don't need to be racing this hard, when it was him and Charles 1-2. Definitely a big move, just because we know later on, here comes Lando Norris. They didn't chew up their tires. They kept their strategy good. Unfortunately, Leclerc had that issue, nearly went to a wall, prevented a 1-2, but Carlos Sainz, just and the same way. He was, I believe, second fastest first practice, fastest the second practice. I don't remember the third one, but then pole, win, what an effort. Smooth operator, top set of the podium. My other shining moment, I would even say for Grid tonight, this is a big hot for me, has to be the Mazda MX-5 Cup at Martinsville. That was so much fun to see. Highly encourage that you can find it on the IMSA YouTube channel. Seeing cars with headlights running in Martinsville, that's something I would not thought of, but that was just phenomenal race, and check it out, and especially the closing laps. I'm hoping this becomes a tradition and put on the same weekend as a NASCAR race weekend too. I think that would be really great, along with another option besides the Truck Series and the Xfinity Series. With that said, tomorrow, Grid Encore, Ben will be on the air with Brenda on a new Motor Monday episode of Grid Encore. Xfinity Series, Truck Series, ARCA West, all going to be discussed. Kobe at Grid tonight, every Wednesday. Josh, him, Matthew, they'll be on the air. Then, of course, we'll be back on the air with another Grid Live pre-race Saturday, and we'll wrap it all up again Sunday right here. Hit the bell icon, subscribe to us on YouTube. Be sure to visit Grid Network TV. Matthew's article is going to be up recapping the NASCAR weekend. And of course, across social media, Grid Network TV, the Grid ranking will be posted up as well. For Matthew and Kobe, I'm Joe. Thank you for watching today's program. We'll see you next time. And before we go, one last comment. Plus, Monsignor wrapping up another mod title that will be discussed at the Encore show as well too. Ben will be there. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.